Hello, hello. It's Cornell, Jermaine, your host. Listen, I wanted to stop in the beginning of this episode to, first of all, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your continued support. But I wanted to just put a disclaimer before this episode. This episode is something that is something I've been wanting to do for a while, and I've partnered with the best person and the best organization that I've found on this particular subject matter, and it is mental health in urban communities. As you may know, mental health is an issue that is affects everyone, no matter the socioeconomic background. But I wanted to discuss it with this gentleman that I have on today, specifically regarding urban communities. And I want you to listen closely, listen in as he offers the best tools, the best advice, the best information that he has regarding the subject matter. Mental health is a serious issue, and we've seen it play out in many scenarios over the years, and not only in urban communities but abroad. So I want to really pause for a moment before we go into episode 2, get you listening closely to what it is he has to say. In addition to the subject matter of mental health, this gentleman that I have on today, who is a brilliant gentleman, I'm so fortunate to have met him and to be in partnership with his organization, McSilver Institute for Poverty Policy and Research at the New York University. But they have an initiative that I also want you to check out called Black Boys and Men, Changing the Narrative. This is another podcast series, 16 episodes, I believe it is, and it focuses on changing the stereotypes and myths concerning Black boys and men. When I tell you this is a brilliant and very very necessary subject matter in this day and time, I want you to tune into his podcast. You can find that, and I know he plugs it a little bit on the show here, but I want to plug it and put emphasis on it myself. It can be found at www.mcsilver.nyu.edu/CTN. And that's where you can find the podcast. And by all means, check out his episodes and really let your boys, let your men in your family, and even your women listen to it, because he talks to thought-provoking professionals and leaders on the subject of stereotypes, myths concerning Black boys, systematic and institutional racism and oppression, all of incarceration, trauma, violence, all of that stuff is discussed on that podcast. So tune in today with the mental health in urban communities. Listen to what he has to say. Take that information and put it to use. But also check out the 16 episode series, Black Boys and Men, Changing the Narrative. So that's it for me. I want to jump and push you right into the episode so you can really listen to what my guest has to say. Thanks so much again for joining me, and I look forward to connecting with you again real soon. Take care.
Welcome to the Build on Beauty podcast, where beauty is born skin deep. Now, here's your host, author, speaker, entrepreneur, Cornell Jermaine.
Thank you all so much for joining us here. We have a special guest. He is a child and adolescent mental health services researcher, former faculty affiliate of the University of Maryland, the Department of Psychiatry's Center for School of Mental Health, and currently serves as the Professor of Poverty Studies and the Director of McSilver Institute for Poverty Policy and Research. Please help me welcome Dr. Michael Lindsey. Dr. Lindsey, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Doing very well. There's a lot we can talk about. And I want you to share as candidly as you would like to. But I wanted to bring you on to talk about mental health in urban communities, primarily because we're seeing a lot of issues and things even going around globally as it pertains to mental health. And we know that our government has not supported this industry as it has in the past, and we need to take it by the horns and learn how to deal with these things. So I wanted to bring you on to talk about some ideas and things that you have in mind regarding it. You're quoted as saying black mental health is not the same as white mental health. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I think that when you look at some of the factors that influence mental health for African Americans, predominantly they live in urban, stressed environments. And I think along with that, you have the experience of trauma, the experiences of financial stress, family disruptions because, perhaps folks are looking or moving for employment, or families are just not able to weather the storms, if you will. And so I think when you kind of couple all of those kinds of issues together, it, really reflects the, mental health consequences of those experiences. And so when I say that it doesn't look the same, I think the way that we express our symptoms, the way that perhaps African Americans may define mental illness and then seek help for services to address those issues is just different. We are not likely to go to a therapist. We're likely to take our problems to church or to a pastor. We're likely to pray about it. In those ways, I think that mental illness looks different for us. And I will just also add that your opening comment, sort of suggested that the government has not always supported mental health in our community. I think that I wouldn't go so far as to say they have not supported it, but I think that there's certainly been federal support for research to really understand the consequences and causes of mental illness, and certainly that research has been directed at African Americans in terms of trying to understand their unique experiences. I think we can do more of it, So there is some work that's been done, but I'd like to see more.
So many people are apprehensive, I think, about mental illness, the treatment for mental illness, because they're concerned about the medication, because we hear so many things about the medicine changing who you are or in all of those dynamics. Would you say that it is possible to treat mental illness without the use of medication?
I won't go on record as saying you can do it without medicine. I mean, certainly we've learned a lot from, as we call them, psychotropic medications and their success in being used as part of the treatment program for any sort of mental illness. But I do think that there's something to be said for the kind of talk therapies and interventions that have been developed to help one with their cognitive processing. So if I'm constantly thinking that my life is a failure, processing what feeds that, are there opportunities for me to, think differently and more positively about my experience as opposed to sort of the self-defeating thinking? Or are there relationship issues that have gone for years unaddressed, but I learned through skill development and therapy how to better communicate my emotions and feelings to let folks know how it makes me feel? I think the combination of those talk therapies and perhaps, if necessary, with the medicine, can be an effective way to treat mental illness. And I also will say too that sometimes we can catch these issues very early, and a lot of the work that I've done has been around school-based programming. So how do we help kids to identify these issues very early, like anxiety, depression, for example, or a trauma that might get in the way of their sort of academic performance. We have a program here at the McSilver Institute called the Step Up program that provides essentially preventative mental health services to kids. We do mentoring and one-on-one support, some group mentoring, and other kinds of skill development activities around greater communication, greater self-awareness that helps kids to better identify some of the challenges in their lives, particularly as it relates to their, school performance. And what we found is that we typically target kids who are on the cusp of, dropping out of school because they're not either regularly attending or they're not doing the work assigned to them. Obviously, not doing the work leads to school failure. And what we found is that the kids we work with in this program have greater results. For example, if the kids, we start from 9th and go through 12th grade, and if the kids remain with us in our program from 9th through 12th grade, they have about an 85% graduation rate. And a high percentage of them, almost close to 90% of them, go on to college. And so I think if I can get the message out about the importance of prevention programming and offering opportunities for kids to be positively engaged in things that are meaningful and that's going to help them to better identify their struggles and address them early on, we need to be doing more things like that.
Yes, certainly. You mentioned the Black church, and it's truly a staple in our community and often a safe place for us to run. What role do you think the Black church should be playing in order to help advance mental wellness?
Well, first I think it starts in the pulpit. I'm a preacher's kid myself, and I think to the extent that the pastor who wields great influence in church, whether she or he can convey positive messages about the importance of mental health treatment and can bring examples, if you will, from the Bible, from whatever kind of sacred scripture that they're referencing, I think that really helps to humanize mental illness and the importance of getting treatment. I think also if churches can provide opportunities for their parishioners to be connected to mental health services, it creates a greater connection to those kinds of experiences people need with respect to mental health treatment. I'm thinking of a great example here in New York. Giving a shout out to my Morehouse brother, Pastor Michael Waldron at First Corinthian Baptist Church, who has a mental health clinic in his church that is free to the public because he thought it was really important for the church as a sanctuary and a holding place, if you will, for people who are struggling with mental health challenges. Well, he took the next step and said, let's do something about it. And, created this, mental health and wellness center for people to come to and wanted to combat the issue of affordability and, financial access by making those services free. Wow. I mean, what if more churches took up that mantle and provided similar types of services? So the church can be a very pivotal institution for creating greater access to mental health treatment in the ways that I outlined.
What resources would you recommend for individuals that are looking just to educate themselves and possibly even be more proactive in their own search for mental wellness?
I mean, I think the first thing is to understand the signs and the symptoms, right? I think there's a great resource, one of the best ones that I know of, the National Institute of Mental Health has, if you Google them, the National Institute of Mental Health, they have a website that goes over a lot of what are the signs and symptoms of all types of mental illness, whether that's depression or whether that's psychosis, which can, be the underpinning of like schizophrenia and that sort of thing, or whether there's trauma. But that website provides a real go-to place to understand what depression looks like, what's the difference between major depression and something that's not as serious, like dysthymic disorder, which is a form of depression, but it's not as serious as a major depression. Those kinds of things are outlined in that website, and it can be a great resource. So I think education is really, really important. Certainly through our institute, we offer a lot of webinars and trainings. It's mostly targeting providers in the state of New York that deliver mental health services, but there are times when we have opportunities for people to have greater access to the kinds of resources and things that we offer. So our website is www.McSilver, which is MCSILV as in Victory, ER.NYU.edu. And, we, again, offer opportunities for, training and understanding of what are the signs and symptoms. But, that NIMH, the National Institute of Mental Health, is a great resource as well.
Good stuff. We're going to wrap up. I have a question because I've another question, I should say. But this term has come up, and I know it's just all over the place, this narcissistic personality disorder. And I'm not sure if this is out of your range, and if it is, just let me know. But I want to get clarity on what is this? I don't know if it's new to the industry or if it's been around and we're just hearing about it, but what exactly is this? I think this short term is NPD. Do you have any information that you can offer on that?
Well, it's been around for quite some time, so it's not a new diagnosis. It's a personality disorder that relates to a person having a sort of grandiose sense of themselves. And so I think it, sort of relates to having this sort of grandiose sense of yourself, this perception of your perceived importance. So it's been around for a long time. It's not anything that's new. We've been, providing diagnosis for that particular personality trait for years.
Okay. But what differentiates that from just someone who's confident and just in their skill or whatever? What's that thin line that you would say?
Yeah, I think that there is a sort of line between a healthy sense of confidence and self-assuredness versus a personality trait where, this sort of grandiose thinking of yourself, that you're better than others, no one is as good as you, that sort of thing. And you embrace it as your mantra, you believe it. And sometimes it comes across as dehumanizing others. And so it can be hurtful in the way that, it's deployed, that personality trait. And I think, as I mentioned, the converse to that is to, as you mentioned, to kind of have a healthy sense of who you are. And it doesn't suggest that you're better than anybody. But, if you practice and you put in the time and you put in the work, then you're fairly, comfortable in delivering whatever it is that you're doing. And so I think that's the kind of qualitative difference.
Got it. Well, just before we get out of here, what would you say to an individual who may be wanting to help a loved one who's in denial of their need for mental treatment. How does one approach that? How can you best assist that person?
Well, I think that's a really, really great question, Cornell, and thank you for asking that because, the work that I've done has looked at how families can influence an individual member of the family to be connected to treatment or not. And what we've found in my research is that when a person feels supported by their family to make that decision to go into treatment, that they're likely to have a stronger connection to treatment. They're likely to have a more meaningful experience with treatment because they're getting the support from their loved ones. But if the converse can also be the case, right, that if a person is not feeling supported by their loved ones, if the loved ones are questioning why they're going to a therapist or mental health treatment to begin with, that's likely to have a negative impact on your connections to treatment. And so if we step back from all of that and look at the kind of experience that family members can cultivate for an individual to both understand and identify their issues. Again, as I said earlier, there's the functioning and non-functioning, right? So if a person is not able to function effectively or their functioning has changed from what it normally has been, then there should be an opportunity for that person to talk with a loved one about it, right, to help reconcile what's happening and to really try to make sense of it. I think sometimes we feel that, perhaps we can stop there and that, we can resolve all of our issues within our family. But I think it's important for family members to realize what their limitations are and also, create the general goodwill of going to a professional and really talking about those challenges. Because maybe sometimes your mother or father or whomever is not the best person to take your problems to. And so having that outside perspective, the non-biased, non-judgmental perspective that a therapist can offer is really important. And so I think messages about that should happen in families. I'd like to see more positive regard and support for mental health treatment as opposed to conveying messages of negativity and making people feel like something's weak about them or they couldn't pull it all together because they had to go to a mental health therapist. In actuality, it's a sign of strength, that you took that next step.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Lindsey, I appreciate you joining me. Tell our listeners where they can find the Black Boys and Men Changing the Narrative podcast.
Yes, so you can go to our website, the McSilver website, but I'm going to add another piece to it to give folks a greater access to the link. So it's McSilver, www.mcsilver.nyu.edu/inequality. The word inequality, INEQUALITY. And if you go to mcsilver.nyu.edu/inequality, you will see more of the great work that we're doing at McSilver Institute and throughout the campus in partnership with our colleagues around campus on the issue of inequality. And also there is the link to our podcast, Changing the Narrative on Black Boys and Men.
Well, Dr. Lindsey, I appreciate you joining me.
Thank you, and I really, really appreciate the work that you're doing. Keep doing the great work that you're doing because we need it.
Well, this has been the Build on Beauty podcast, where beauty is born skin deep. I'm your host, Cornell Jermaine. Until next time, let your soul be made whole. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Build on Beauty podcast. For more information about our host, please visit cornelljermaine.com.